talking hardball, the bull and the better. Talking hardball, part of betting weekly. Handicappers, they're all in the know. Pick some winners and then we say let's go. So come on, it's time to watch the show. We're talking hardball, Ken Griffey's grotesquely swollen jaw. We're talking hardball, over under on the hot dogs. Talking hardball, bring your giant bag of peanuts. Talking hardball.
Welcome into the latest edition of Betting Weekly Hardball. I'm Doug Kezirian, joined by Wes Reynolds, and a light day on today's baseball card. Only 6 games, 3 of which are already underway. We're going to break down some in-game betting lines for that you can get on your Bet Rivers app. Just a reminder, Betting Weekly Hardball, every single weekday, a brand new show, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Monday through Friday, and then also Betting Weekly Fast Break, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, also Monday through Friday. Wes, great to be with you. A light card, but we have a different twist with some in-game lines today and then a couple interesting matchups later today.
Yeah, we do. Couple really hot teams, by the way, underway. Arguably the hottest team in baseball, the Minnesota Twins, going here in the early action. And then, of course, the Dodgers cap off the light 6-game slate tonight, hosting they're just called the Athletics, apparently. They're not even adopting Sacramento for a year before they move to Las Vegas. So A's and Dodgers, the nightcap tonight.
Very true. And yes, the A's got the better of them the other night, so you feel like you want to flex if you ever took them plus $2 and change. But then, as a mutual friend of ours would always say, I have a lot of good value tickets at the bottom of my trash can because sometimes when you take these big dogs, you think there's value, and it just doesn't always work out that way. So we'll get to those games. But you mentioned the hottest team in baseball. Let's pick that one up. Minnesota Twins, 10 straight wins, and Chris Paddock, of all people, throwing a gem today at Camden Yards, 5 innings of shutout ball, scattering just 3 hits, 1 walk. Twinkies offense is providing just enough today. Buxton went yard 3-0 in the top of the 6th. So, obviously there's always opportunities, and we as sports bettors do have FOMO. We are a victim of fear of missing out. So sometimes we think, should we get involved? The live line right now in the 6th inning at Bet Rivers, it's minus 1,100. So that probably is unnecessary unless you want to add them to like a parlay for later and just think that they're going to stay hot and hang on. But the 2.5 run line, minus $1.39, that does interest me a little bit. Now, I'm guessing there's an out or so in the top of the 6th. And then, you always have to factor this in with live wagering. And I'm curious to hear your general thoughts. But, sometimes we like to just share our insight with our audience because we might be more experienced at this. Is don't forget about the bottom of the 9th. If it's a multi-run game, like if you're trying to protect 2.5 on the run line, you get the old catcher's indifference. They'll give away second base in the 9th inning and just focus on getting those outs. So you do get sort of backdoored at times, but you can also pad this lead if you're Minnesota. Any thoughts on the minus 2.5 right now at minus 139?
I wouldn't lay it on the Twins here. Number one, because I don't. Sagano has not pitched that bad. He's through 5 1/3 now. He's at about 85 pitches. barring not having a base runner on, he should be able to get through 6. You go 9-1-2 is who's going to come up for the Twins in the bottom of 6. Kierstad, Holiday, and Mountcastle. But or the Orioles, I should say. We talk about how hot the Twins are. The Orioles have been really cold, 15-26. Keep in mind, this is a team that won 91 games last year and was second in the AL East. They are now a distant 5th, dead last in that division. So the Orioles have been, I think, a real unpleasant surprise to start 2025. I thought you knew that they had a couple losses, but you thought the core lineup with Mountcastle and with Henderson and with Roochman are together, but they have not been hitting up to their usual capability. But I still don't know if I want to lay it though, because I feel like Chris Paddock, he's for certainly coming out for the 6th with only 65 pitches, but he could lose it at any time. And he's been, quite frankly, kind of lucky. And when I say lucky, what I'm usually looking at for those pitcher stats are like batting average, balls in play, 239, a paltry 239 for Chris Paddock this year. So he's been a little bit fortunate. Joe Ryan's been a little bit fortunate in this rotation. So I don't want to like totally pour cold water on the Twins, but they've been kind of lucky here in this stretch as well. And look, when you win 10 in a row, you got to get some luck at some point.
Much like winter is coming, regression is coming, but that's okay. You mean they're not going to finish the season on this 100-something game win streak? Yeah, probably not, but it doesn't mean there's not value right now. How do you approach teams that are red hot? I talked about it with Adam the Bull earlier this week and even last week. I like it. I think when teams are raking, there's a little bounce in the step in the clubhouse. They're seeing things well. We talk about in basketball and football and other sports how there's the flat spot, right? When teams are fat and happy, you want to catch them at the peak, right? You know, they tell about buy the dip, sell the peak in stocks. I think you got to be careful with that in baseball. When teams are rolling, they're rolling, and there's a lot of sort of energy, positive energy in the clubhouse. Last weekend, I discussed it with the Phillies. They were just kind of had a bounce in their step. Now they have a good lineup that was hot, so it's a little bit of both. But I'm very careful betting into the Twins, who clearly are not a team that, you know, maybe go in the World Series and that they're just kind of in the middle of a hot streak. We see teams like this that are sort of mediocre go hot. But to your point, the Orioles have been the biggest disappointment in all of baseball in my eyes. So I'm in no rush to fade the Twins against Baltimore here.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, I think, in terms of the streak, because like with baseball, it's every single day. You can get momentum halted in other sports, whether it's in the NFL or whether it's in the NBA, because you're going to have, you know, various days off in between games. You're not getting many days off in baseball. So the one thing you don't want to do as a bettor, one of the many things you don't want to do, but this is something I struggled with over the years. I think I'm getting better at it over time, is not being stubborn. And like, okay, I know that this is a mirage, so I got to get in front of it. You don't have to do that every single day, because you're going to end up with a lot more losing tickets. And then you finally beat the streak, and it's like, okay, I finally did that, but I lost 3 bets along the way to get that win where I knew it was going to end. So stubbornness, I think, is one of the Achilles heels of sports bettors. You know, we know that the Minnesota Twins, I don't expect that they're going to be there as a contender at the end. They're still 4th in their division, by the way, despite the fact that they have won 10 in a row and are 23-20. So yeah, you don't want to be stubborn. And I think, you know, it's best just to stay away. But you also don't want to get aboard a team too, because it's like when you get aboard, it's like when you play a trend or you play an angle and everybody knows about it, that's when it's going to lose. So that's just intuition telling you that. So that's why usually on these streaks, I try to stay away from these teams.
I mentioned it earlier, and it's worth mentioning. Anytime there's a cover streak or things like that, if you bet into a streak and you're trying to be the tough guy because it's like picking the 14th seed in your bracket because you want to brag about it or whatever, you can only be right once. Okay. If you're fading into a win streak or cover streak or whatever trend, you can only be right once. You can be wrong a bunch of times. But if you tail it and your biggest fear is tailing on the back end of something or too late to the party, you can only be wrong once, but you can be right a lot. So even if the Twins have won 10 straight and you're like, I'm late to the party, I want to fade in, this streak could end at 13-14. But if it ends today, fine, you threaded the needle. But you can only be wrong once if you tail a streak. So that's something to keep in mind. Like Wes said, you get the win, but you took 3 losses to get there. So that's something to keep in mind for sure. Just an update on this line. It's a coin flip for the Twins, -2.5, -112. If you want to lay the 2.5, they've gone to the bottom of the 6 and it's underway. So there's first strike is thrown. But, obviously the Orioles have the extra outs, right? With 3.5 innings left, but it is the 9-1-2. So just to kind of tease out what Wes was really sharp in bringing up who's up in the bottom half. I asked him about laying the 2.5 with the Twins. Well, he wanted to see where we were in the lineup for the Orioles at 9-1-2. That is a factor. If you're picking up the lineup in maybe the 6th spot, that's a little better to fade because extra outs and things like that. So these are things to look for when you're looking ahead, mid-game, in-game wagering, and pitch count is another thing Wes brought up. I think that's really smart. If a pitcher's in a groove, but he's working the count and he's at 87 pitches through 5 innings or something, maybe you want to really start to scrutinize the bullpen and whether they can hang on here because the shelf life of the pitcher is dwindling.
Yeah, and also third time through the order now as we turn it over from the 9 to the top of the order with Jackson Holiday. Usually that third time through the order, more often than not, unless a guy is just absolutely rolling, you've got him timed a little bit better. Now you've seen him a couple times, so I think that gives the hitters the advantage. And plus, you bring up the point with the pitch count. If a guy's in the mid 80s, you're just trying to get him through the inning. You're just trying to get him through, and some guys are going to have longer leashes. Some guys are going to have shorter leashes. I'll give an example of one that I actually lost last night. Hunter Dobbins for the Red Sox had 78 pitches through 5 innings. He was over 15.5 on the recorded out. So it's like he's just got to get one more. He's rolling, gives up a base hit, then gives up a home run. Then it's like, okay, they're going to give him one more hitter. And he gave up a single, and then they took him out. So pitch count was low, but the momentum was bad. And sometimes that can happen, and that can go quickly, especially if you're playing these pitcher props.
I split my 2 plays yesterday. One was the no-run first inning in that Red Sox-Tigers game, the Nerfy. And Robbins was fine. It was the Scooble who gave up a run. And so that got to me, but that happens. I won my other one, which was the run line for the Rangers against the pitiful Rockies. And we want to make sure you get involved in the conversation. Join the chat and the comment section on YouTube. Corey's in there. Howdy, Doug and Wes. And he said, great call on the Rangers run line yesterday. And Cubs fade train continues to roll for me. He's been needling Adam with the Cubbies there coming back to life. But let me ask you this about Chris Paddock, and we'll get going to the other games for sure. When you have a guy, Paddock, who's not been great this year, but he's pitching great today, I actually think just because pitching, you just kind of don't know if your stuff is that electric that day. I actually think when we're this deep into the game, I actually think like the regression is going to come maybe the next start. I think if we're through 4 or 5 innings, his stuff must be just good today. And he woke up on the right side of the bed. I'm not thinking he's going to get, blasted but to your point, third time through the lineup, how do you treat a guy who's obviously not an ace, but pitching like an ace that particular day and moving forward? I definitely listen to the broadcast. I listen to what the analyst is saying because he's usually a former pitcher or catcher, and they help me decipher if this Paddock is throwing some meat in it. Sometimes they're hard hit balls to the hot corners and he's just getting lucky with where the ball's hit. But otherwise, if a bad pitcher is pitching well and the stuff's working, I think it's going to work the rest of the game.
It probably is. And to your point, already 2 outs here. He's only at 76 pitches through 5 2/3. So we'll see if they extend him into the 7th because, managers have different philosophies. Sometimes it's like, okay, this is your number. This is your pitch count. That's it for however long you go. And then sometimes it's like, okay, we got to really look at our bullpen and see if the bullpen is taxed. And that's where you got to look at the usage of some of these guys, guys that have worked 3 and 4 days and who is available. And you see like some of these taxed bullpens. And sometimes you got to get length out of your starter. And that's what you're looking for, especially when you're playing like recorded outs props, a little bit less than strikeouts, because you still got to see if the pitcher, in fact, has strikeout stuff, which, Chris Paddock doesn't really. He's got 3 strikeouts today, but he's not a big strikeout pitcher at all. I think he's like 6.81 for 9 innings. That's below average, I think, for a 5-day starter. But Yeah, they'll probably, I'm guessing maybe give him a hitter or two, or just kind of weigh the situation there in the seventh. But yeah, regression probably not coming here, because you got a team, and now he is through 6, 3-0, only 79 pitches for Chris Paddock, just giving up 3 hits and a walk. The regression probably, if it does come next start, and I'm guessing that'll be Cleveland midweek next week.
And it's worth mentioning that, because Wes mentioned it, the next time the Orioles step to the plate, it's the meat of the lineup. It's the 3, 4, 5 spot with Mountcastle, Henderson, and Rutschman. So something to keep in mind. But now the Bet Rivers line's gone up to 3, -3 plus 07. So they have the equal number of outs remaining, 7, 8, 9 innings, going to the top of the 7. And then you push, you get your money back. So if you think the Twins can lock it down with the bullpen after Paddock, maybe the offense can get going, because what happens in these games, and again, this is sort of live betting baseball 101, you're going to get the Orioles sort of B relievers, right? It's not a 1-run game that they're trailing. So it starts with the fact that they're trailing, and it's not their usual hold team into their closer. It's the guys who get put in when they're down multiple runs. And so in the 7th inning, 3-0, you're getting their B lineup. So one thing I like to do when it's the Rockies is definitely, in this case, lay 3 if the Rockies have scoreless, because you're getting their bad bullpen guys and not even the good ones, and not necessarily they have any. So this is something that I would actually, because you're getting plus money. Now, remember, another variable that I just mentioned, the Orioles have the meat of the lineup coming up. What about the Twins? And it's not like the Twins have been knocking the cover off the ball. They only have 4 hits. The difference is they have 2 home runs. So any opinion here before we turn the page, and we'll come back to this Twins-O's game, but we should get to the rest of the card. But any opinion on when it's a 3-0 game and you're laying or taking the actual number, it's not a hook on the run line?
Yeah, look, you also have to look at the situation in terms of, what's the bullpen usage, because these two teams, by the way, played a doubleheader yesterday. And a lot of the Twins' better relievers, now they pitched the first game and not necessarily the second game. So they're probably available unless they had worked a couple days before. But this is one I'm going to stay away from, because the O's just they have not been able to get it going. They lost 2 yesterday. They're about to lose again. So nothing for me on this one as we go to the top of the 7th.
I'm not convinced the Orioles are going to turn it around. Every season, there's 1 or 2 teams that had high aspirations that just didn't get it turned around, whether it's injuries and just mispriced futures or whatever. Like the Blue Jays were dead last year. Some people thought good things coming into last year. So there's no guarantee that this Orioles team will start hitting, and obviously mid-game, no guarantee. So like I mentioned earlier. Go ahead, Wes.
Sorry, I was just going to say, here's a perfect example of, bullpen usage. Sagano's in the mid-90s here. Like, he's through 6 innings. Like, this would be where they would take him out. But they probably need to extend him a little bit because they're so shorthanded in the bullpen. So you're seeing him start the 7th, despite the fact that he's almost near 100 pitches.
Right. So we are underway in that top 7 inning. But these are all things to consider for future reference when in-game wagering on baseball, especially if you have a team like the Dodgers tonight with the big money line. You want to add a little leg here and add something in that regard. So just something to consider as we move along. And also just a reminder to sign up for the newsletter at bettingweeklystudios.com for weekly betting tips and the entire newsletter. This is Betting Weekly Hardball, a brand new show, part of the Bet Rivers Network, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And we are on Wednesdays and Thursdays, sometimes Fridays, we'll be discussing in-game wagering. So there's 2 other games going on right now. So 3 during the day and 3 at night on this abbreviated baseball card. And the Braves lead the Nationals 4-1 in the 8th inning. So this is a case where the home team has the lead, 4-1, so sizable lead, or unlikely to get their 9th inning ups. And so the Nats at the top of the 8th are going to have 2 at-bats, whereas the Braves are only going to have 1. So you have it's 4-2 now. Someone just went yard.
C.J. Abrams just had a home run.
Okay, so now Braves, I like +2 here. So it's a flat. It's -117, -118 juice on each side. So right now, Braves 4-2 lead in the top of the 8th. The 2 is the run line. I think the Nats +2 -117 is a very good bet. It's the 2-way line, so you get the push. And with the Braves only having 1 more at bat, in theory, I think it's a very advantageous line there. I think it's a bad number.
Yeah, I kind of lean that way as well. The Braves just looking over the last couple days. By the way, this is 2-1 so far in the series for the Braves. So they're trying to win 3 of 4. And I'm just looking as we scroll here some of the bullpen usage. Iglesias, their closer, did get used on Monday night and also got used that he did not get used on Tuesday. So he is at least available for today, you would think. And now Rosario reaches. So yeah, absolutely. Like the plus runs here. Braves trying to get back, by the way, to 500. They did it once a couple games ago. But remember, this team started 0-7, and it's like, what's wrong with this team? It's like, okay, they're going to be fine. They're going to progress, and now they're just about back to 500 here. That doesn't mean all their problems are solved, but certainly a lot better team because they had to start with the Dodgers and the Padres, two of the best teams in baseball, and you had to start, and they lose all of those games. So that's why you got to look who these teams are playing. Not all losses and not all streaks, winning or losing streaks, are created equal. But to your point, I would certainly lean with the Nats here. With by the way, I think it's 5, 6, 7 coming up for the Braves, and then it would be
Riley, right?
yeah.
So it'd be Riley, Harris, and Albies after Olsen made the last out in the 7th. So Riley concerns me. The rest don't. But I thought it was a really good spot to pounce because it was the meat of the lineup for the Nats. Even after the Abrams home run,
Right.
Rosario gets on, and now we're looking at a 1.5 for the line. But now it's up to 2, so it's 2 outs or something like that. Yeah, 2 outs right now. So +2, +133, runner on first. You're not. Oh, that was a double play. So you're not going to get much. So that's not the best time to pounce. But we kind of had that opportunity. But that's something to keep in mind with the Braves. Now you're getting kind of like I was mentioning with the Orioles, you're going to get the Nats B team relievers because they're down 2 runs, going to pitch, but it's the bottom sort of half of the Braves lineup.
Yeah, no question about it. So I would still, I think that the Nats might be able to keep them at bay here. So I think the +2 should still be good.
I do too. The line's down, so maybe something happened in the game, but you get that catcher's indifference too. I can't tell you how many times that comes into play when usually it'll be 2 outs with a runner on and they'll let him take second. So the Nats do get a runner to second. So that's exciting. We have a runner in scoring position and we'll see how it plays out. But these are things to keep in mind as you look at other games moving forward the rest of the summer and rest of people betting. Is these are all sort of the nuance. And granted, the algorithms that determine these in-game wagering also know that the lineup for the Braves is going to be 6, 7, 8, or whatever it is. But I'm of the belief in all sports that the in-game wagering algorithms have not really caught up to sort of the game situation, especially in basketball and football, where I do think even with the algorithms being so advanced, I still think there are opportunities in game wagering.
Yeah, no question about it. And in some of them, if it's like a national TV game, like if it's a Sunday night baseball or if it's a Saturday night Fox game, you might get them monitoring that a little bit closer than you are like a boilerplate weekday or weeknight game.
Well said. One more game going on, and it's another sort of teaching opportunity here because it's a blowout. It's 7-0 Reds at home over the White Sox. Okay, Chicago only has 2 hits, and it's been one of those games. So we're not quite to the position player pitching in the 9th inning, but we may be headed there at some point for the Southsiders. But the in-game line here is 7. So the Reds are -7, -165. Think about that. They're guaranteed to have 1 fewer at bat, right? We're in the top 7. The Reds aren't going to bat bottom 9. So they only have 2 more ups. And they are -165 to cover 7. Now you get your money back if it lands 7 because it's a 2-way line on the money line, but that's a huge number. But the White Sox haven't been doing anything. You're going to get the White Sox bad bullpen guys to sort of mop up innings eat here. They've already gone to Schuster in the 6th. So you're going to, and then meanwhile, Martinez is 2 hits through. We're in the 7th, so he's about to go through 7. He'll probably get replaced after this inning because he's at 94 pitches. But you're not getting the Reds' ace relievers, if that makes sense. You're going to get the guys who are pitched with a 7-run lead. I think that's a huge number. So now it's gone to 7.5. I think that's pretty hefty for me, but I'm also not taking the plus 7.5 either.
Yeah, I'm already actually invested in this game. I have the over 9, so I'm a little bit off pace here because it's 8.5 juice to the over. But this is one where it's so borderline where it's like I don't want to hedge out, and and then all of a sudden they get 3 runs in the bottom of the 7. So sometimes you got to let it ride, even if you're a little bit behind, and you're going to be behind in a lot of these games for an in game if you have pre-flop wagers for Major League Baseball. So I look at myself and I've got 3, 4, 5. I've got Dela Cruz, Hayes, and Steer, especially Dela Cruz, who has a home run already today, coming up. So I've just got to hope that the Reds put up 1 or 2 here in the 7th, then maybe you get a garbage run on the other side. But you're right on Martinez. Martinez is going to be taken out after 7. They don't want to have to use a high leverage guy or a closer here. They will have to if the White Sox get the runs, but then you get your over. So this is one I'm just kind of sitting tight with, and hoping that the Reds had, because they've had to do all the damage today with the White Sox only having 2 hits, but hoping that the Reds at least played a couple so I can get a push and play and then could get a garbage run. But no, I'm not buying out like my pregame over here.
Okay, so this is also interesting. De La Cruz is up first for the Reds in the bottom half of the 7th. If and when he gets out, that's going to change the live line drastically because, again, they're up 7-0. It's bottom 7. This is likely as last at bat unless the Reds start hitting, and then obviously the 7.5 run line doesn't matter. So I would say the over-under for the game, the juice it'll stay 8.5, but the juice will drastically change.
It'll be like
under
140 to the under,
yeah,
I think.
It'll be like 20 cents from 121 to 140. That's what's going to happen because it looks like the market's not expecting any runs from the White Sox. But we'll see. I think this is truly fascinating because it's a very different situation than a 3-run game with the Twins or a 2-run game with the Braves. Now they got a leadoff double, so they have a guy on second. Does Atlanta bottom 8? So if you took the +2, like I was liking, be careful. Not looking good for that. So these are all. I mean, it's baseball. There's no clock. Anything crazy stuff can happen. We see comebacks all the time, but this is sort of why it's nuanced in betting. So we'll come back to those live games. By the way, those wondering, the Twins have added a run, so it's now 4-0, top 7, 1 out, runner on first for Minnesota. So they are a handful of outs away from making it 11 straight wins. But let's get to the games that have not started, and we have a couple interesting ones. We'll start in Arlington. Best pitching matchup of the day, easily. Astros at the Rangers. Hunter Brown against Jacob deGrom. Good to see deGrom healthy and pitching. Hasn't been, Cy Young vintage deGrom, but Brown has 5 of his last 7 starts have been scoreless. So he's been great. And, I always like to start with like sort of the obvious question here. When you have this kind of a pitching matchup and you see the over-under 7, which is so low, but obviously the pitching matchup, do you immediately think, Wes, like under first 5 to isolate the starters at 3.5, game 7? I mean, Rangers obviously lineup isn't amazing. Astros same. All things considered, the under it immediately comes to mind, even first 5, because if one of these guys throws lights out, you have a little protection, and then 5 innings is not that much to get through, especially when you factor in the bottom half of the lineups in a couple of these innings.
I would certainly lean that way. I did watch actually deGrom's last start over the weekend against Detroit, and if you look at the numbers, did get the win and had 10 strikeouts in the game, but he had a lot of 3-2 counts in that game. He was not getting a lot of quick outs, and when you look at if you're doing like pitcher props, recorded outs, or even strikeouts, you want guys that are going to get quick outs. Because he got taken out. I think he might have had like 90 some pitches. deGrom is not a guy, by the way, as good as he is, that goes triple digit pitches very often. They just don't do that because he had the injury history, of course, that you laid out a little bit there. So would lean to the under. You got to think Hunter Brown is pitching a little bit above his skis here, but I'm not in. Maybe the regression doesn't come all at once. I look and his ERA is 148. His xFIP is 264. If your xFIP is still under 3, that's pretty good. Even though you're supposed to get a little bit of regression just by the numbers, that's pretty darn good if that's under 3. So I would lean under here. Have not bet this game as of yet, though.
And just quick check in on the Nats Braves. Austin Riley leadoff double. Remember, I mentioned I was only worried about him. They get a ground out, moves him to third, and I believe a strikeout. So now it's 2 outs, runner on third, and then the live wagering's so fun because you can bet on whether basically he'll score again because the over under 6.5, and it's 4-2 with a guy on third with 2 outs. Under's minus 177. So obviously, if you bet the under and you get out of the jam, you also have to fade a run in the top half of the ninth. So in terms of the side, now you said you saw DeGrom pitch, a lot of 3-2 counts, things like that. Are you looking at the Astros at all? It's a great spot sort of bet on him, and it's plus money at plus 112 at Bet Rivers.
Not really. I think that this is probably the right price here. When I looked at it, I didn't really find much of an edge. At least both these teams, by the way, a couple games over 500. They are starting now a 4-game series. Astros just took 2 of 3 from Kansas City, who's been pretty solid this year. And meanwhile, Texas, of course, gets the free square with Colorado. They take 3 easily there in Arlington. So. Not really. I looked at the price and I didn't see a ton of an edge here necessarily. I think it's just about right. DeGrom should be about $1.25 favorite.
Okay. So lean to the under. I lean under. When you lean under in a pitching matchup like this, do you break it up first 5 at all, Wes, or anything like that? Pretty fair price. And I do worry about extras and the ghost runners in these types of tight matchups. So I actually do prefer first 5 under. But as you can see, the juice at minus 127 certainly skews that way as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes I'll split it up. You can go half and half. If you're whatever your unit size is, you're not betting a full unit. You go maybe half under first 5 and then half under full game. Sometimes you'll go 2-0. Sometimes you'll go 0-2. But sometimes you'll split them. Maybe they'll get 4 runs and then the thing will just die later in the game. But that's sometimes how I approach, especially these totals. I don't do that as much with the sides because with the sides, you can obviously play like if you're playing an underdog, you can play plus a half a run and lay vig. You can't really do that as much on the totals unless you have a lot of alternate total markets out there.
Okay, and the Braves did get a run home, so it was a full count. And Eli White knocks it in. So he many foul pitches and stuff. So it's now 5-2 Braves in the bottom 8, runner on first. So that over 6.5 cashes with the plus money. Now Nats can still backdoor with a run, assuming they get out of this situation. But the Braves do scratch with the leadoff double. Austin Riley does score with a 2-out hit in the in the bottom half of the 8th inning. Another game coming up tonight. I mentioned the Athletics, not the A's, the Athletics at the Dodgers. A's did get that 1 win early in the series, but the Dodgers bats woke up. And here we are, minus 205 current price at Bet Rivers. The comeback on the Athletics plus 175. Over under 9.5, a little juiced minus 118 to the over. Now the Dodgers, and I touched on this, I don't want to back them. I know they have their lineup, but when Sauer or someone like that is on the bump, I'm just a little uneasy laying the 205. But as much as the Athletics are better than their kind of name has been the last couple of years, I'm just a little reluctant here, especially the run line minus 113. Only the home team only getting 8. It's just a lot to do in a long season, but they probably should smack them around too.
This is a little bit of a risky game because you don't know how Sauer necessarily is going to go. So you're trying to kind of evaluate that. I would lean maybe a little bit to under. If he has some props up. I think the under strikeouts basically is like 3.5. Probably have to lay heavy juice because this is going to be like Sauer and then Ben Kasparius, who Dave Roberts said was going to be kind of a hybrid, go 1 to 3 innings. So you don't know if Sauer, is he going to go only a couple innings? Is he going to go 3? Is he going to go 4? The market is pricing it like he's going to go a little bit longer. I think than maybe you would anticipate for the opener because the recorded outs, I believe 14.5 and there are some 13.5s out there as well. So this is one I don't really know how long he's going to go. And that's what kind of keeps me a little bit out of the game.
So no pick here for both of us. It is a matchup to watch. It's also a late game. So something to keep in mind with people want to. And you can get some of the nerfies and yerfies here in these situations. I always say, and I'm not the only one and coined this phrase or anything like that, but watching baseball or just betting in general is like having a beer, right? You can put a $5 bet. It's just like a $5 beer. So if you want to bet on one inning or in game, I mean, for example, we've gone to the bottom or top of the ninth now, 5-2 Nats and Braves. You can bet over under 7.5, over or under. Will anyone get a run and things like that? So these are things you can do if you just kind of want to sit back, not chasing or anything like that, but have a little break in the day. But that's the beauty of a sport like baseball and the speed of it. You get those half inning breaks in between where you have opportunities to sort of assess. Golf is very conducive to live wagering. The players have to walk between shots and things along those lines. We have one more game later today to get through, and that's where today's boosted MLB bet is on both the Blue Jays and the Rays, each to record at least 2 hits in the first inning. That's plus 700. Head to the House Specials tab on the Bet Rivers app to get in on the action. So like I said, it's a quick bet. You can get plus 700. Nice little boost there for Rays at Blue Jays. And that's the game coming up most recently about 30 minutes from now. You have Littell on the bump for Tampa and Gossman for the Blue Jays. And both teams around 500. Toronto literally is 500 and Rays a couple 4 games under. So any opinion here? I know you have a play ready, but what's your thought process as you handicap this game?
Yeah, was just looking here in terms of the lineup and kind of I want to play Toronto here, but I don't want to lay 165, 170-ish on them. So the way that I decided to play Toronto, and sometimes you can do that a little bit with a big favorite if it's a little bit out of your price range or you're a little bit gun shy on laying that kind of a big favorite. I don't think you should be. I don't think you should ever limit yourself like that. But if you do, play the other team total under. And that's what I did here with the Tampa Bay Rays, simply because I think that their most dangerous hitter is not in the lineup, and that's Yandy Diaz. So Kevin Gausman, he's been a little bit better on the road so far. He's always, I think, a little bit better on the road than he actually is at home. But if you look at how he's pitched at home this year, he's got 3 starts up there in T-Town. And he's gone 18 innings, so he's averaging 6 per start. He's given up 10 hits and 4 earned runs in 3 home starts. And the Rays, without Yandy Diaz, they still struggle a bit against righties as well. Chris Bassett, by the way, last start gave up 7 hits and 2 walks, but he only allowed 1 run, so the Rays couldn't hit within scoring position. Meanwhile, Toronto bullpen has been pretty solid, except for the closer, Jeff Hoffman, or who was the closer. He's been a little bit shaky, but Flaherty, Garcia, they've been pretty solid, and they're going to be used in a high leverage situation, assuming Toronto has the lead late. But I just thought 3.5, that might be a lot to ask for the Rays here in this spot, going against Gausman, who I think has been pretty consistent, been pretty solid. Plus the fact, you look at this is a getaway game for the Rays. They got to travel to Miami to start a weekend set. Toronto stays home. And when I talk about getaway games, usually if you have both teams that are traveling the next day and they have an early game, if you have both teams, I think it gives it a better advantage to play unders in those games because it's a quick hack because they know they got to both get in the locker room, get ready to go, say goodbye to the kids, say goodbye to the wife or significant other, and then they got to bounce out of town. So that's why one of the reasons I kind of like unders when you have 2 teams going on the road, but you don't have that here because Toronto is going to keep that homestand going where I believe they get Detroit this weekend.
And you said to isolate the team total. So if you don't want to lay the big juice at Bet Rivers, it's Blue Jays minus 177. You want to do the Rays maybe under, and that's because you like the pitcher. Now, if this was initially you preferred the Blue Jays on the money line because you were fading the Rays pitcher, then you would maybe look at Toronto's team total over. Is that a fair assumption?
Could be. But it's not that I'm fading Littell necessarily here, even though he's got maybe some slight regression. He's not a big strikeout pitcher. The batting average balls in play, by the way, 237. That is pretty darn low for a starting pitcher, certainly on the lower end. But it's more a backing of Gausman and just not liking the Rays lineup, certainly without Yandy Diaz. I think he's the major danger hitter in this lineup. And this is a team that, they can really struggle at the plate and haven't been hitting in scoring positions They have Lau or Joshua Lau up there. He's only got a couple at bats this year. But if you look, Aranda is really the only guy in that lineup, I think, based on how he's performing this year, that really scares you. Brandon Lau doesn't hurt you. Carnero, Caballero, Wiles, Dan Jansen, the catcher at the bottom's only hitting 170. So without Diaz, I think the Rays are going to really struggle to score runs.
I was just bringing up an example, though. So you said if you don't want to lay the money line, in this case, Toronto, you play the other team's team total under. But if your handicap of the game was that you didn't like the other team's pitcher, you could just do the favored team's over, right?
Sure. You could
it's
do that.
It's all about isolating your angle that you have in terms of the handicap.
Yeah, you could do that, or you could play unearned or earn runs, I should say, over if you want to fade a certain pitcher. Like remember last year when Patrick Corbin was really struggling? It was paid Patrick Corbin day, and everybody was fading the side. It's like you can also play the over in terms of earn runs, or some books are offering walk props if a guy's really having trouble with the walk rate. So definitely those are other ways to do it. There's several different ways to kind of handicap a same angle in baseball, at least.
Okay, good stuff. And just an update, we almost had the catcher's indifference opportunity. We got a leadoff infield single by Josh Bell. Then it was a ground out, just got the lead runner. So runner on first, one out, and then a double play to end the game. So we didn't get the 2-out catcher indifference potential out. So the Braves do win 5-2. They cover that 2-run line, and the game lands 7. White Sox scratch in the top of the 8th, so it's 7-1 now. Wes, you're in play here, maybe for your over.
Yeah, need one more.
Yeah, remember it was -7 minus money at one point, so the White Sox actually did score, and we're getting to the last couple outs for the Reds. So Cruz didn't do anything in terms of that, and then the Twins are up 4-0, 8th inning underway now. And that is a straight pick 'em. Minnesota's -4, -109, but because they're the road team, remember, they'll get their outs in the 9th. So all things interesting moving forward. So just a reminder, we want to get you involved here in our newsletter. Sign up for that newsletter at thebettingweeklystudios.com for weekly betting tips and everything else in the newsletter. We have a brand new show that you are watching right here on the Bet Rivers Network, Betting Weekly Hardball, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific every single day during the week, and also a basketball show, Betting Weekly Fast Break. That's top of the hour, 3 p.m. Eastern, every weekday, obviously breaking down the NBA playoffs, but we'll also look ahead to the WNBA season. Wes will be on that show tomorrow, so we'll discuss some futures. Also, opening night card into the weekend. Caitlin Clark and the Fever face Angel Reese in the Sky on Saturday. So we'll get into all that. But top of the hour, Albert Nguyen, also known as Analytics Capper, he will be joining me top of the hour to break down tonight's Nuggets Thunder game as Denver tries to stave off elimination. We'll also get Albert's opinions on the WNBA futures now that the season is almost here, Wes.
Yeah, and Indianapolis, by the way, is the professional basketball capital of the world, Doug. Or at least that's what I'm going with right now, as the Pacers wait their opponent in the Eastern Conference Finals. And then, oh, by the way, who you just mentioned, Caitlin Clark in the Indiana Fever, start against Angel Reese in the Chicago Sky on Saturday.
High-profile game, to say the least. And Wes, our Indiana native and Indiana grad, the IU Hoosier, obviously going to be pushing the Hoosier State because they are the center of the world. It's going to be interesting. Who do you want, Knicks or banged-up Celtics in the next round?
The Celtics, because they're banged up, but I'd rather have the Knicks. I grew up as a teenager in the 90s with the Hicks versus Knicks. You remember that headline very well from the New York Post, Doug, with Reggie Miller and Spike Lee going at it. 30 years later, Reggie may be on the call for Turner Sports, actually, for this series. I don't know if that's been announced yet by the Warner Brothers Discovery people. I haven't seen that press release, but that adds a little bit more intrigue, and there's just a little rivalry there. And plus the fact that the Pacers did beat the Knicks last year. They won Game 7 in the Garden. Maybe somebody's got to tell Keyshawn Johnson that, because it's like, oh, this is going to be too much for Indiana. I'm like, they just beat him last year in the Eastern Conference semifinals. So I'm looking forward to that. There's a little bit of heat there with the Pacers and certainly the Knicks.
Clearly a passionate Indiana Pacers fan, and rightfully so. They got a lot of swagger right now, how they've ripped through the first 2 rounds. And again, much more breakdown of the NBA playoffs and WNBA season, top of the hour on Betting Weekly Fast Break. every single day during the work week, Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. One quick question, Wes. We want to encourage everyone to get involved in the conversation. Corey in the chat says, I might take the Rays live today after Gossman is pulled if it's close. So that's interesting. Going into a game, knowing how you might play it live, obviously how the game unfolds and plays out will change any opinion. But that is something to consider. If you guys have an opinion, you think the market's right on the price, and you say, no, but I'm eyeing this. So these are good things to sort of keep in mind. There's always an angle for someone here.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly if you're doing that, look at that bullpen usage. Who's going to be available? How many, have you had guys that have worked 2 or 3 days in a row? Then they're probably not going to be available. So that's something I think to look at when you anticipate, okay, how long is this starter going to go? Like 5 2/3, or is he going to go 6, or, well into the 7th, or when's he going to get pulled? So that's a good point that Corey makes there in the chat.
All right, that's going to do it for this show. We appreciate everyone chiming in. Tomorrow, Chris Massero, professional bettor based in San Diego, but also joins us often here on our Betting Weekly shows from Las Vegas. He'll be on Betting Weekly Hardball, so looking to get his breakdown of the day on the diamond. You really look ahead to the weekend action. Wes, you'll be on Betting Weekly Fast Break tomorrow, like I said, discussing the NBA playoffs, your Pacers, and obviously Game 6 at the Garden with the Knicks trying to finish off the banged-up Celtics. But coming up next, top of the hour, Betting Weekly Fast Break. Albert and Wynn's going to join me. We'll look at Nuggets hosting the Thunder. OKC, a road favorite, trying to finish them off and advance to the Western Conference Finals to face the Minnesota Timberwolves. We appreciate everyone joining us. Hope you tune in tomorrow and top of the hour over on Betting Weekly Fast Break. For everyone behind the scenes, our great production staff, and for Wes Reynolds, I'm Doug Kezirian. We'll see you back here tomorrow.